My next guest this afternoon is the Shadow Minister for Families, Social Services and Indigenous Australians, Linda Burney. Linda, welcome.
Hi Patricia, how are you?
Good. Are you heartened by New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian's call to change the lyrics of the national anthem?
I and the Labor Party very much welcome the comments by the Premier. What she said, Patricia, is two things. Firstly, that the national anthem has to be truthful about the whole story of Australia, which is over 65,000 years old, and include First Nations people. And secondly, there needs to be a national discussion about this. And I think both of those things are extremely welcome.
What do you think of the Minister Ken Wyatt's plan to legislate a representative Indigenous body before the election, which he revealed here yesterday?
Well, that's not news. The government has been talking about that for quite a long time now, and the Minister has also spoken about it a couple of times. But a few points. The thing that I'm still unclear about is whether the legislated voice that the Minister is referring to is to the Parliament or to the government. That's one question I want really cleared up. The spirit of Uluru, and you know that the Labor Party supports the Uluru Statement in full. The three elements of the Uluru Statement: a constitutionally enshrined voice, a Makarrata Commission to oversee agreement and treaty making, and a national process of truth-telling. It seems to me all of those things are coming together, but the point about a legislated voice has been the agenda of this government for some time, and whether it's an elected body or an appointed body is still completely unclear.
Does that give the government enough time to consult properly?
Well, I understand that and the Minister's been quite open with his timetable. It all depends, of course, of when the next election is going to be. But I understand that the working groups that the Minister has had in place, I make no comments about the working groups and what their task was, is undergoing a process of consultation now, and then it would come back to, I suppose, the Minister submitting a model to the Cabinet. So it has to go through that process, and then what could be a lengthy process of legislation within the Parliament. I think you are right, Patricia. The time frame is incredibly tight, and I hope that the Minister can achieve it.
Are you worried that the Greens have, according to Lydia Thorpe, changed that view on their order of Uluru? They say treaty should happen first? I'm not worried at all about what the Greens are saying or not saying, quite frankly. I listened to the interview you did with Adam Bance some weeks ago, and I just listened to the interview you did with Lydia Thorpe, and it's still very unclear to me on what the formal position of the Greens should be. But one of the interesting things, Patricia, about treaty is that a lot of people say treaty is important, and of course it is, and Labor fully supports the idea of a treaty, and we know there are a number of treaty processes already happening in a number of states and territories. But treaty is an easy thing to say. When you drill down to what do you mean by a treaty, what would be included, who would you negotiate with, how would it be put in place, they're very big and complex questions, and Mick Dodson, who is a Treaty Commissioner in the Northern Territory, speaks about our community, and I mean the First Nations communities, being treaty ready, and in British Columbia that took 13 years. So I think the idea of treaties incredibly important. Labor supports it. But it is not an easy process. It is complex and it is time-consuming, and it needs to be inclusive. Just finally, is it Labor's view that the job seeker payment should have been continued at the current rate until March? It is absolutely Labor's view that the current rate of $250 a pay should have been maintained until the end of March. We believe it is too soon. It's morally wrong, but it's economically wrong as well.
Linda Burney, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Patricia.
Linda Burney is the Shadow Minister for Families, Social Services and Indigenous Australians.